Hello and welcome to the first of this year's Hughes of the World. So I hope you can hear me okay. I hope we're broadcasting all right from these wonderful waterfalls here in freezing cold Central African Republic. So just a quick hello to everyone watching here. We've got Pineapple Boy saying hola, comrades. Compadres, actually. We've got Jeremy Goff saying Happy Insurrection Day. Yes, it's January the 6th already. Seems like yesterday when people were swarming all over the Capitol building trying to kill the people inside at the behest of the President of the United States of America. And it sounds crazy saying these things, but that's actually what happened. Jesus. Jacob says, good evening, party people. Thank you, Jacob. Good evening to you too. We've got Reagan Elite say good evening all. We've got Pineapple Boy. Would have been a good day to bring charges to the orange one. It would have been a very good day, actually. I would like to see him in chains. I've always appreciated how factual and accurate the name of the Central African Republic is, says John. We will come to that. It is African. We got Charlie Nelson watching on Facebook there saying hi up Graham. We've got Just Me in Videos saying hi all. Chobai saying Graham wonders why the BBC didn't return its calls. Yeah, because when I was setting up tonight I discovered that you've got to actually give 24 hours notice if you want to go live on a new channel. So I'm broadcasting on Graham Hughes Politics today, but next week I'll be on Graham Hughes Travels, I promise. If I'm still here. Indeed. Martin says, good evening, belated Happy New Year. Just Me in Video says, sound good. New Year and new Hughes of the World, says Reagan Lee. I know, you're spoiled, aren't you? Carve episodes must be brilliant after so many months in the works. It's not. Yes, I've been doing nothing for the last 3 months except working on this video. Not quite, no. Good evening all, says Mad Monk 33. Number 3 says hello. And Just Me and Vince is saying to Jeremy Goff, Happy New Year. Hope your chest is doing better in the new year. And yes, I hope that as well. Jeremy, please join us on the Discord chat after the show. We'll be going over to the Rejoin EU Discord server. So if you would join us there, you very, very welcome. Okay, let's dive in, shall we? Today, we're looking at the Central African Republic, which, as its name suggests, is located in Central Africa. Although whether it's a republic or not is slightly up for debate. You see this quite a lot where you have Taiwan wants to call itself the Republic of China. So if you go to Taiwan, you get a ROC stamp in your passport, and that doesn't stand for Russian Olympic Committee. And if you go to China, that's the People's Republic of China. Okay, there are people in China, but I don't know if they're in charge. I don't know if it's kind of saying we're a democracy. Or even better, you've got the Republic of Congo, which apparently is a republic, and then you've got the Democratic Republic of Congo next door. Whether that's democratic or not is totally up for debate. And also, the Republic of Congo and the Democratic Republic of Congo both border Central African Republic, so they're going to be relevant tonight. I think also if you go to Korea, you get a stamp. South Korea is called the Republic of Korea when you get the stamp in your passport. North Korea is called the People's Republic of Korea. So, yeah, sometimes the names aren't entirely accurate. Case in point being the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. United, my arse. Okay, so Central African Republic, not a happy story tonight, I'm afraid. Not too many chances for jokes and things. The reality is that the Central African Republic is one of, if not the poorest country in the world. It's if you go there, it's real Africa. If you want to see real Africa, go to the Central African Republic, but it's still a bit dangerous, so I wouldn't recommend travelling out of the capital, Bangui. Or Bangui, as some people say. I say Bangui. That's how I'm going to pronounce it tonight. So if I've been wrong all my life, then if someone wants to let me know in the chat, please go ahead. So let's look at the positives. Look, Central African Republic has some incredible wildlife. It's got some rare wildlife. It's got some of the best places to see things like gorillas, to see things like elephants, especially in the southwest corner of the country, which is actually a national park. But it is woefully undeveloped. The government has been absolutely crap for the last 60 years. And before then, it was a victim of colonization. And before then, it was a victim of slavery, which we're going to come to in the history. So when you go there, if you go there, don't expect a warm, friendly welcome. That's not to say the people aren't nice. They really, really are. They're lovely people. But they've learned to be cautious over the years. Lovely people, terrible, terrible government. It's also what is sometimes described as a beggar sitting on a throne of gold. And you can say this about a few countries. For my money, I would say in Bolivia in South America is a really good example of this. And there were some similarities between Bolivia and Central African Republic in that they've both been exploited by outside powers. They both border a buttload of other countries, but also they're both landlocked countries. And I've spoken about this before when I did the show about Afghanistan, when I did the show about Bolivia. No one in their right mind would create a country that is landlocked, that isn't like up a mountain or something. I mean, Nepal can get away with it. Switzerland can get away with it. Lesotho, by and large, can get away with it. They're up in the mountains. But the landlocked countries of Africa are they're over a barrel. The barrel being, if you want to get goods in and out the country in any kind of quantity, you've got to take it on roads, because there's not much in the way of rail in Africa. You've got to take them on roads, which might be a bit crap, in other people's countries. And those countries might not be stable. Those countries might not be safe to drive something through. Or those countries might charge you a massive amount of tax to drive through there. Being landlocked is not great. The solution to countries that are landlocked is simply by opening them up, by making them part of a larger supranational group, as in the EU, or you could look at the US and see the same thing. Well, you do notice that the inland states are generally poorer than the states on the coast, on the west coast and the east coast. And it's all to do with physical geography. It's all to do with economic gravity. It's all to do with economic gravity. It's easy to get stuff in and out of these places. It's not easy to get stuff in and out of Paraguay or Tajikistan, or in this case, the Central African Republic. But the thing is, this place has got diamonds. It's got gold. I mean, it's a country that is rich in resources that other countries want, and other countries have exploited in the past, and I'm sure will continue to exploit in the future. And it's just a shame that the country of Central African Republic hasn't had a chance to exploit them themselves. So moving back to the chat, I had a student from DRC once who was the loveliest bloke, like he had seen everything and understood it all. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me, Sugarfeet. Honestly, I know it's a cliche. You go, oh, the people were really lovely in Africa. But they really were. I don't mean to sound like this, I'm going to bore you to death with me stories of travelling through Africa. But apart from a few problems with the authorities in West Africa, generally speaking, I had a good laugh. I mean, the people were really, really nice. They were happy to meet me and chat with me, and they weren't hostile. And then months later, I find myself in London where no one's looking at each other on the train, and I'm like, ooh, I wish we had a bit more camaraderie. I wish we had a bit more of this, feeling like we are actually all in it together. And it's mad that in the UK and other countries, not everyone, but a lot of people, they don't want to share anything, do they? The rich people, all they want in the world is to be richer. There's a riddle about, like, what is it that a poor man has but a rich man wants, and it's more powerful than God, and all this kind of stuff. And the answer's nothing, because a rich man wants nothing in the riddle. That's not true. I've never met a rich person who's gone, oh, I've got enough. They want more. They want more and more and more. And the stingiest people I've ever met in my life have also been the richest. And the people in Africa, and the people in Central African Republic, and in Chad, and in Cameroon, and Congo, and Democratic Republic of Congo, they don't have much, but they're happy to share their lunch with you. They don't ask anything in return. They're not doing it to get a job or to get ahead in life, or so they get a guarantee for a mortgage or something. It's just because they see, oh look, there's a person. They might need food. I'll share my food with them. That's a good attitude. Anyway, I just want to say some positives before I go in, because this, like with a lot of countries in the area, it's not a happy story, I've got to say. The GDP per capita is less than $1.30 a day. So that's about £1 a day. $476 a year. That is the GDP per capita. Their biggest import partners are the Dutch, and the biggest export partners are the Belgians. The Belgians love them some diamonds. One of the things that you'll find out very quickly when you go there, if you go there, is it is like Angola and Senegal, it's surprisingly expensive. It's not crazy expensive like Angola. It's crazy expensive, but it's still like the prices there that you pay for things are way out of the budget of most of the people who live in that country. And it's an ex-French colony, which I'll come to in the history. Not that the French seem to give much of a toss about it, to be honest with you. They seem to concentrate their gaze in Africa on Gabon, Senegal, and Cote d'Ivoire. I mean, in recent years, when there's been a lot of turmoil in Central African Republic, the French have kind of not got involved or left it up to African peacekeeping troops or UN peacekeeping troops to restore some kind of semblance of peace. And I'm torn on this, because at one point, I don't want forever these European countries who invaded Africa in the 1880s to lord it over African countries for the rest of time. But at the same time, European countries that interfered in Africa and stole trillions of pounds worth of resources from Africa, they do have a debt to pay. They do have a debt to pay to Africa, not the other way round. So, yeah, there's that. I'm not going to have a huge go against the French tonight, like I did against the Belgians when I was talking about Congo. Well, I was talking about Belgium, but we talked about Congo, didn't we? But I will say that I feel like the Central African Republic has been let down by its former colonial overlords. Not to say that makes Britain or Germany or Portugal or Spain any less off the hook for what they did in the past. But yeah, there's some few things in the history of Central African Republic where the French got involved with people they shouldn't have done. Anyway, so the capital is called Bangui, and the people who live there, their dominant is Central African. They're not called the Central African Republicans. They are called Central Africans. The population is around 4.7 million, which is about the size of Panama. That's Panama's population, about 4.7 million as well. There are 80 tribes that make up the country. Most people are either Gabaya, Manjia. They're either Banda or Mabaka Sara. And then you've got lots and lots of languages. You've got lots of tribal languages, but the three main languages are French, Sango, Sango is really interesting because it's an African Creole. Most Creoles are French or English or German Creoles, but this is actually a Creole based on African languages. The reason why a Creole will come along in any given society, like Tok Pisin is the lingua franca of Papua New Guinea, is because all the different tribes in a given country spoke different languages because they weren't together as a country before the Europeans turned up. The Europeans turn up and they say, oh, you're all one country now. So you had an administrative centre and you had people moving about from that administrative centre to, I don't know, collect slaves, collect taxes, to do whatever, you know, the colonial overlords wanted them to do. And they needed a language to be able, that everyone could speak. And that's why you get Creoles. And then, yeah, Arabic is the third most spoken language there as well, which is something I'm going to come on to as well, because like in other countries in Africa that I might mention, like Nigeria and Cote d'Ivoire, it's got an Arabic south and an Arabic north and a Christian south. How well do you think that's going down? Yeah, we'll come to that. Anyway, so let's talk about the flag for a moment before I go back into the comments. It's blue, which represents the sky. White, peace. Green, hope. Sometimes it's grass, but on this flag it's hope. Yellow, tolerance. And the horrible red stripe down the middle, which I really hate, is blood shed for the independence of the nation, as it always is on flags, except for the Union flag, which is the butcher's apron. So it's not flag. It's not our blood. Put it mildly. Okay, so and the star is the guiding light towards freedom. That's nice, isn't it? Anyway, so that's the flag. It's it's got too many colours. It's too busy. I don't like it. And it's better than the tricolour. It's kind of, they tried to merge together the colours of the French tricolour with the Pan-African colours, and this is what they came up with. Yeah, that's all right. Charlie Nasser says there was a German Democratic Republic, East Germany. Yeah, the GDR. Yeah, it was so democratic, you weren't allowed to vote. Is that Bangi or Bangi? I think it's pronounced Bangi, actually. Yeah, it is, because the river is called the Ubangi, so it must be pronounced Bangi. Okay, I'm going to say this Bang-E from now on. Try and get it right. Hughes' law of gravity says sugar-free. China will build them a helipad, indeed. They'd need their own Boris Johnson to build a tunnel to the sea. Yes, Chubby, that'll work. Sorry. Pineapple Boy says, having a coastline not only allows a country to trade with others, it also allows traders to exchange goods freely without road tax imposed by feudal lords. And then talks about the Hanseatic League, which was a league of different traders from different countries back in the day, 500 years ago, wasn't it? Am I getting this right? It was a long time ago, but it was what's now Belgium and what's now Holland and Denmark, and they all traded together. But it wasn't a nation state. It's a bit weird. Anyway, maybe I should get some pointers on how I should rule my dukedom. Probably not from this video, mate. We've got Keith House saying, has he been there? Nothing's in this so far. Comparison with easygoing Paraguay and places like Cote d'Ivoire suggests so. Very shallow. Oh, thanks, Keith. The Central African flag is the only one of two national flags divided into four horizontal shapes. The other is Mauritius. Thank you, Asperger's Europe. The UGC site is down. The UC government site is down again. Pineapple Boy says, blood of those who died for their freedom. Megan Lee, do they have an airport? Yes, they've got an airport in Bangui, the capital. I have been there, but I only stepped over the border. So, cards on the table. I didn't travel for the country because at the time, it was too freaking dangerous. And I didn't want to die to set a Guinness World Record. You know, I wanted to prove that it was possible rather than prove it was possible to get halfway and get me head chopped off. Okay, so, yeah, the old flag that they had in the 70s was actually pretty cool. I mean, you know, I probably shouldn't say that, but because when it was the Central African Empire, not a great time. Not a great time. Okay, so let's dive into the geography of. Oh, hang on! I pressed the wrong button. Oh God, I've been given like a Fibonacci sequence, is it, on my computer? And now my map is not appearing. Oh yes, it is. There it is. Oh, sorry. My screen might have turned off for a moment there. So let's zoom into the map of the world. This is the world. That's where we live, our little planet of planet Earth there. And yeah, it's a great place. Don't know why we're killing it, but, you know, it's what we decided to do. So let's have a little bit of a zoom in here. There's good old Africa. And we've already done an episode on Algeria over here. We've already done an episode on Burkina Faso and Benin. And coming up, we've got Cote d'Ivoire, we've got Chad, we've got Cameroon, we've got Congo down here. We've got loads of seas to go still. Okay, so this is the Central African Republic here. And there's not much in the way of infrastructure in the Central African Republic. There's not much in the way of roads and things like that. And up here is mostly, in fact, if I change the layers so we get a topographical map, it might be better. So up here, we have the... I was going to say that it looks a lot like Burkina Faso. Sorry. If it's going to come back up now. I don't know if it's going to come back up. It's my internet being really slow. See the shape of Burkina Faso? It's kind of the same as shape as... Yeah. Anyway, moving swiftly on. So the north of the country is quite deserty. The middle of the country is quite savanna-y and got plains and mountains and things. And then the south of the country down here is very jungly, dense jungle. Right down here in this little hook that comes down here, this is where the national park is. That is well worth a visit if you ever go there. And it's a little bit safer than the rest of the country, I would say. You might be all right in the capital, but I really wouldn't recommend a trip to the north at the moment for various reasons. Although it's called the Central African Republic, it's not actually technically the center of Africa. You can't really tell from here, but that's actually a little bit of Congo, which is here where my pointer is. It's so close, but it's not actually the center. In the same way that if we have a look at Equatorial Guinea here, and then we hit on the layers, and I'll just go to the other map. Zoom out a bit so you can see the equator. Come on, give me the equator. You going to give me the equator, Google? No, it's not going to give me the... There it is! Oh, it disappeared. All right, so you got to zoom out loads to get an equator. All right. You can just about see that the equator doesn't actually pass through Equatorial Guinea. It's equatorial. It's not bang on the equator. Who cares? So yeah, the capital there, Bangui, and the Obangi River Basin runs through there, and then we've got 6 countries that border the Central African Republic. They are Cameroon, Chad, Sudan, South Sudan over here, which became a country in 2011. We've got the Democratic Republic of Congo down here, and then we've got the Republic of Congo down here, which are both quite weirdly shaped, like horns, but they both have access to the sea. As you can see, the Republic of Congo can get to the sea here, and then you've got this little narrow, tiny bit of land here between these 2 bits of Angola, which allows the Democratic Republic of Congo access to the sea, because access to the sea is critical. Not that it's, done either of those countries a lot of good. So Cameroon is Central African Republic's busy mate. Most goods coming in and out of Central African Republic will go through Douala, which is in Cameroon down here. And the other countries, well, Chad is unstable at the best of times. South Sudan's in the middle of civil conflict at the moment. That's the capital, Juba, down there. Sudan, this is actually the Darfur region down here that borders the Central African Republic. So obviously Darfur's been in turmoil for well over a decade now. It's been a place of not much happiness and light, to put it mildly. And then you've got the Democratic Republic of Congo, and especially this area of the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is far away from Kinshasa, very difficult to get to, very isolated. And then you got the Republic of Congo, who put me in jail for a week. So yeah, a bit of slim pickings when it comes to neighbours for poor old Central African Republic. It's only Cameroon that seems to be all right, although Cameroon is having internal trauma of its own at the moment, where the English-speaking area of Cameroon, is wanting to break away and become its own country. This part here, from the French-speaking bit, which is this part here. Anyway, so where was I? Yes. So the best way to get around Central African Republic is actually by boats. There's 30 main rivers that run through the country, although most of the time it's not considered safe enough to travel through. One of the ways I could have gone when I was on my journey, I could have crossed the border here at, I've forgotten what the name of the place is. I'm going to have to zoom in. That's really small on my screen. I'm going to have to make it bigger. That was it. Garunda Mobula. That's where I crossed the border there from Cameroon. Then I went back into Cameroon. The reason being is I needed to go to Equatorial Guinea and Gabon. If I crossed through Central African Republic here to the capital, then I would have been going into the Democratic Republic of Congo, and it would have missed out all of these countries here and Sao Tome and Principe. So it was better for me to cross over the border, come back in here, go to Equatorial Guinea, go to Gabon, go over to Sao Tome and Principe, back to Gabon, and then down to Congo and Republic of Congo and Angola and Namibia, etc. Okay, right. So I'm getting off the subject here, but yes, it's a country that is both cursed and blessed at the same time. It's got a lot of beautiful, beautiful natural occurring wonders. It's got the Boali Falls. It's also got the Buar megaliths in Nana Mabari, which is known as the African Stonehenge. It's got thousands and thousands of unique plants that only exist in this country. This part that I was talking about earlier, where there's a national park here called the Zanga Sangha National Park, and there's loads of gorillas and elephants, etc. in there. It's good for stargazing. It's one of the least light polluted countries in the world. Can you believe that? Apart from little islands in the Pacific. And so a lot of astronomers go there to look up at the night sky. And also it's so close to the equator, which is great for stargazing as well, because it means that you get to see a lot more stars. Where Ginger Island is in Panama, you can actually see the North Star and the Southern Cross at the same time, which is really cool. Okay, but yes, and one last thing, there's something near the capital, Bangui, called the Bangui Magnetic Anomaly. Can't even say it. Which scientists have no idea what this thing is, but basically your compasses don't work. They think it might be a meteor that hit millions of years ago and left lots of magnetic deposits, but it just makes your magnets go crazy. There's a place in Russia that's similar, and there's also Magnetic Island off Townsville in Australia, which is also notorious for making compasses on ships go a bit nuts. Pineapple Boy, oh, thank you for my £5 super chat. I missed Hughes the World. Glad we continued. Oh, thank you, mate. No worries. The African pole of inaccessibility, furthest inland, is the town of Obo in Central African Republic, near the tri-point with South Sudan and DRC. Thank you, Asperger's. We should have looked that up on the map. Should we look that up on the map for shit and giggles? Should we do this? Let's see if we can find this mythical place. Helps if I let you see on the map. Bring me the map. Bring me the map. The magic map. The magic Google map. Big thanks to Google for letting me use their maps. I don't think they got much say in it. Right, so where is it? Town of Obo, and near the tri-point with South Sudan and DRC. Okay, well that's the tri-point there. There's Ezo there. There's a place called Ezo. Ezo. There you go. Make the text a bit bigger. Oh, there's Obo. There it is. Oh, Asperger's. There you go, mate. I found it for you. Look at that. Brilliant. There you go. That's the most inaccessible point in Africa. Oh, that sounds like a challenge now. I want to go there. I want to go and visit Obo. Anyone want to come to Obo with me? Come on, it'll be a laugh. Right, so moving swiftly on. I got a Nike hoodie for Christmas as well. This is my old Nike hoodie. My new hoodie is actually under this hoodie. It's just really, really cold in here, and I didn't want to wear my coat because the heating bills have gone through the roof. So I'm in a very, very cold room at the moment. I'm surprised I can't see my breath. It's actually snow outside. Anyway, in my man cave, which is literally a cave at the moment. I'm going to start getting stalagmites soon. Okay, so let's dive into the history of the Central African Republic. So there's been an insane number of coups d'etats in the Central African Republic since it got independence in 1960. Probably not as many as Comoros, which is known as Cloud Cuckoo Land, as in Coop Land, but still a lot. So let's dive in. Central African Republic, or the area that is now the Central African Republic, was home to one of humanity's earliest civilizations. Thousands of years ago, there was an advanced culture which traded far and wide, long before the Egyptians had their 4 millennia in the sun. But by the 1500s, the slave trade was well and truly underway, and it completely decimated the population, coming from both East and West, East being Arabic slavers and the West being European slavers, taking Africans over to the Americas, or the New World. And as recently as the 19th century, 20,000 Central Africans were sold each year in Egypt. Every year, 20,000 people. In the 1880s, we had the Scramble for Africa. That's when a group of bastards met up in Paris or Berlin or somewhere. They sat down with a map of Africa, and the great powers divided this entire continent, the richest continent in the world in terms of resources. They split it between themselves, and France got the Central African Republic. So what did they do? Well, the first thing they did is divided the country into 17 parts, and they gave each of those parts of the country to different companies. Not to like local administrators who were working for the government. No, companies, private enterprise. Yeah, so that went as well as you can possibly imagine. And basically, the people who worked, the Africans who lived there, who were put to work, were conscripted. So it was just basically another wave of slavery under a different name. Under the French cosh, the vast coffee and cotton and tobacco plantations were established. These companies paid a fixed amount each year to the French government, plus 15% of their agricultural dividends. But the locals who were conscripted to work, they were treated absolutely brutally by the overseers, by the white overseers mostly. So there was a resistance movement which lasted for about 40 years until about the 1920s, when it was quashed in 3 horrible ways, one of which was famine. Another one was waves of smallpox epidemics, because diseases kill people. Yeah, I know people nowadays think that diseases only kill people from developing nations, but diseases kill anyone. And if you don't have any sort of natural immunity because it's a new disease to your community, then you're dicing with death. And the French possibly didn't really care that much to give people vaccinations back then against smallpox. And the other thing that quashed any kind of rebellions was the French military, who went in and basically killed a lot of people for rebelling. Okay, so moving swiftly on, after World War II and the more European nonsense, brutal nonsense, the first shoots of nationalism started when Barthélemy Bodega's movement, the Mouvement de Evolution de Société d'Afrique Noire, was born, and in 1960, Central African Republic actually got independence. 1 year after Boganda was mysteriously killed in a plane crash. The first president was a guy called David Dacko, and he ruled for 6 years, and he quickly became repressive and dictatorial. There's going to be a pattern here emerging as we talk through the history of the place. In 1966, he was overthrown by an army commander and close relative, Jean-Bédel Bokassa. Now, Bokassa, his name lives in infamy in Central Africa and other places around the world, because this guy was an absolute monster. In a decade of monsters, including Pol Pot and Idi Amin, this was the guy who killed school children, beat them to death. I will come to it in a moment. Oh my God. So the country was ruled for the next 13 years by one of the most sordid, brutal, and notorious regimes in the history of Africa. And that is saying something. All opposition was snuffed out. Dissidents and offenders were publicly clubbed to death, sometimes with Bokassa taking part in clubbing people to death. France bailed out this monster time and time again, because he just kept spending money on shite. And the French went, oh, that's great. Here you go. Have some more money, you mad bastard. And the French, in return, got uranium for their nuclear power plants and nuclear weapons. And they got to hunt big game in the south of the country. This wasn't in the height of the Victorian era. This was in the 70s. This was in our lifetime. Yeah, seriously. Bokassa also negotiated massive loans from South Africa and from private banks in the USA. And then he squandered this money on a bunch of mad projects, hardly any of which were completed. His mad projects culminated in the 70s with him proclaiming himself emperor, changing the name of the country to the Central African Empire, changing the flag to one he presumably designed himself. And unbelievably, when he crowned himself emperor of the Central African Empire, who paid for his coronation? Who stumped up the $20 million for his coronation? $20 million that at the time was equivalent to Central African Republic's entire annual earnings. Yeah, it was the French. The French government gave him $20 million to have a gaudy coronation ceremony. He spent $5 million on a crown. Meanwhile, people were dying. People were dying of starvation. People were dying of malnutrition. People were dying of disease. And people were dying because of the judicial beatings, the executions, and the massacres that were taking place under Bokassa's leadership. This included school children who refused to wear uniforms designed by one of Bokassa's wives. And as a punishment for refusing to wear their uniforms, they were beaten to death. This actually happened in our lifetime. Anyway, in 1979, France finally saw fucking sense and stopped giving this monster money. Because, monsters need money in order to monster. Take all the money away, they can't monster anymore. So anyway, France cut off his supply of free money. And while Bokassa was in Libya begging for more cash, former President David Dacko returned and deposed the madman with the help of some French paratroopers. Although he was a gobshite too, don't forget, and he was himself deposed in 1981 by André Colling-Bas, who in 1986 created a one-party state. After being in power for 5 years, he was due for election. He said, "Oh, sod this, I'm not having an election." Created a one-party state, and all opposition groups and parties were banned once again. Bokassa returned to Bangui, but was quickly arrested and charged with treason, child murder, and cannibalism. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the former leader of a country was charged and found guilty of cannibalism. He was sentenced to death, but obviously being a wealthy man, he wasn't actually going to be put to death or, spend any time in a real jail. So he got to live out most of the rest of his life in a folly that he had built for himself in Berengo. He was freed. He was actually freed in 1993, and he died 3 years later. Meanwhile, President Colling-Bas' 12 years of absolutist rule came to an end when he was defeated in an election in 1993. And Ange Felix Patasse became president, leading Central African Republic's first real civilian government. He stacked the government with his fellow tribesmen, which led to a 1996 army mutiny led by officers from a southern tribe, and Bangui the capital became a war zone. After a year or so of horror, there was a peace deal signed in 1997, backed by an 800-strong African peacekeeping force, and there were elections held the following year and the year after that, actually, which Patasse won but there were lots of accusations of vote rigging at the time, and no one was particularly happy about it. There was an unsuccessful coup attempt in 2002, led by Army Chief of Staff General Francois Bozize, Bozize, I guess, and the civil war resumed. Bozize soon gained control over areas in the north and the south, and even parts of the capital. And meanwhile, the government drafted in forces from neighbouring Democratic Republic of Congo, who were supposed to be fighting against these insurgents, but instead spent most of their time raping and pillaging. Meanwhile, towns were cut off from outside supplies. People died of malnutrition. People starved to death. People were forced to flee their homes. Tens of thousands fled the country. Bokassa left the country at one point on a state visit to Niger for some reason. Big mistake. Don't leave the country when your country is in turmoil, because you're probably bound to be deposed while you're out the country. Happens all the time, mate. Also, hint to wannabe dictators. If you get into power in an army coup, the first thing you should do, disband the army. Trust me on that one. Hey, anyway, Bokassa was hated, but Bozize by this point, but Bozize wasn't much better. He chummied up to Gaddafi in Libya and gave the Libyans the monopoly over the country's gold and diamond production. And then in 2004, the Central African Republic Bush War began. Bozize promised to hold elections the following year and not stand himself, but he stood anyway. With reportedly a moderate amount of vote rigging, he won the election. Bokassa wasn't allowed to run for that. By 2007, the government still wasn't in control of the whole country, but at least a peace agreement had been signed by some of the rebel groups, because at this point there were like 5, 6, 7 different groups all fighting against each other for various different reasons. This is what happens when a European who's never been to a particular place in the world draws a big circle around an area and says all these tribes should live together as one country. Now, they did this on purpose, divide and rule. They wanted these places not to be stable, so that the white people who went in there would be seen as the stabilizing force and be looked up to. Oh, if we've got a problem, we'll go to the white man. He'll sort everything out for us, because they all play cricket and shit. So anyway, as a result of colonialism, the legacy of the borders that were drawn up by a bunch of white guys in the 1880s in Berlin, this war is still pretty much going on. I mean, it's still not a safe country to visit by any stretch of the imagination. You really don't want to be traveling around Central African Republic much at this time. Things have got better than they were 10 years ago, but still not great. In 2011, Bozize was re-elected in an election which was widely considered fraudulent. And then in November 2012, Seleka, a coalition of rebel groups, took over towns in the northern and central regions of the country. These groups eventually reached a peace deal with Bozize's government in January 2013, involving a power-sharing agreement. But the deal broke down and the rebels seized the capital in the following March, and Bozize fled the country. And on the 31st of May that year, Bozize was indicted on charges of genocide and crimes against humanity. Fighting intensified around the country, including attacks on civilians from Seleka's predominantly Muslim fighters and also Christian militias. So not only did you have tribal warfare going on, you also have this religious warfare. Christian versus Arab. Oh, sorry, not Arab. Jesus, where am I going with that? Christian versus Muslim. What Britain and other countries did when they drew up these borders is they purposely made these countries so that the north of the country, in Nigeria, in Cote d'Ivoire and other places, was predominantly Muslim, Sudan as well, and the south of the country was predominantly Christian, or in the case of South Sudan, it was animist, or at least another religion. Let them fight amongst themselves and we'll just steal all their resources. That was the plan. Still seems to be the plan to this very bloody day. Anyway, by August of 2013, the reports are over 200,000 internally displaced persons. In 2014, the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon called on the UN Security Council to immediately deploy 3,000 troops to the country, bolstering the 6,000 African Union troops who were already there and 2,000 French troops to combat civilians being murdered in large numbers. And also in 2014, there was a deal basically where the reigning president resigned and Catherine Samba Panza was elected as interim president by the National Transitional Council, becoming the first ever female Central African president. And by the end of 2014, the country was de facto partitioned north and south, with the anti-Balaka in the southwest and the ex-Selika in the northeast. 417 of the 436 mosques around the country had been destroyed at this point, and Muslim women were so scared of going out in public, they were giving birth to their children at home rather than going to hospitals. In 2015, at the end of 2015, in December, the Selika rebels declared an independent Republic of Lagone. And, I'll have to visit there now. We've got their own flag and everything. And President Faustin Archange how was his name? Touradera was... I'm probably saying that wrong. Touradera? Can I say Touradera? President Touradera was sworn in on the 30th of March 2016. No representatives of the Selika rebel group or anti-Balaka militias were invited to take part in the subsequent government. There were more elections held on the 27th of December 2020, which Touradera won again, so he's still president now. Former President Francois Bozize announced his candidacy to run in 2020, but was rejected by the Constitutional Court of the country, which held that he did not satisfy the good morality requirement for candidates because of an international warrant and United Nations sanctions against him for alleged assassinations, torture, and other crimes. In the election in 2020, some 800 of the country's polling stations, 14% of the total polling stations, were closed due to violence, and 3 Burundian peacekeepers were killed in the course of the election, in the run-up to the election. Like I said, President Touradera was re-elected, and on April the 10th last year, the Kanga Bandoro region, the Republic of Lagone, as it being called, was recaptured by government forces. So, what do you want to know? The place is a mess. I don't know what to say. It just saddens me that so many people suffer so badly around the world and we know so little about it. We know more about the Kardashians than we do about nations in Africa that are going through turmoil. It's not reported in the news. You never hear about the Central African Republic. I don't remember ever seeing a news report about the Central African Republic. Even more shocking, at the late 90s and early 2000s, there were 2 Congolese civil wars, and they were called the Great War. They were basically the World Wars of Africa. Millions of people died. Countries all around Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, were drawn into the conflict. Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, Sudan, Central African Republic, Cameroon. I mean, everywhere. It was an absolute nightmare, and it just wasn't reported. We just don't find out about stuff like this unless we actually bother to go out and look for it. It's never delivered. It's never like, hey, did you know about this? And I hope all the best for Central African Republic. I hope that they can put their troubles behind them. I feel like the best solution to a lot of these problems might be for countries to break apart so people can feel like they're being ruled over by people who speak like them, who look like them, who act like them. Not just being part of a country because of some historical anomaly like the conference in Berlin where they drew up the map and said, these are the countries of Africa now. We've just invented them, even though none of them existed before, really. And I just find it so sad. I just find it so massively heartbreaking. And there are some green shoots of hope, not just in countries in Africa, but also the fact that yesterday the Coulson Four were found not guilty of causing criminal damage because all they did was take away a statue of a criminal, of a murderer, a mass murderer, a man who transported over 80,000 souls across the sea against their will, killing 20,000 of them in the process, many of them children. We've got to reckon with our history. And although this was a French colony, and maybe the French can take a bit more of the blame for that, wasn't necessarily the French slavers who were capturing people from the Central African Republic before then, during the era of slavery, which went on until the 1860s in America. And yet, you know, we look at around of what we've got today, the wealth we've accumulated, and just think, how much of that has come from human suffering? How much of that has just come because we stole it from someone else, some other civilization, went into someone else's country and took their stuff? And the least we can do at the moment, the very, very least, this is less than, you know, giving money in aid or development funding. This is less than, you know, our museums giving back the treasures that were plundered from these places. The least we can do is know about it. It is honestly the very least. Just know a little bit about these places. So if you ever meet someone from Central African Republic, you can say, you know, wow, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what you've had to go through. I didn't do it personally, but at least I'm aware. At least I'm aware. Okay, so I'll just drop into the comments before I go. How much does the wallpaper cost? Just me and videos are saying, you forgot Charlie Nelson, £5. No, I did. I think I read that out, didn't I? Charlie Nelson, thank you very much for the super chat. Pineapple Boy, thank you very much for the super chat as well. Really, really appreciate it. France turning a blind eye to what was happening. Yeah. Did he get a cake? Flew in on Concorde? No, I think that was Saseki of Saseki or whatever his name is of Democratic Republic of Congo, or Zaire as it was back in the day. Graham, I think you should issue a horrible history warning with some of your videos. Yeah. BMW Nasha says genocide in China present. Yeah, in Xinjiang province up in the northwest of the country. People are being massacred. The Uyghurs are being massacred. Being put into resettlement camps. I mean, being tortured. And we're not strong enough. And this is what pisses me off about... I don't want to go on about Brexit because this isn't about Brexit. But how the hell does Britain think it's going to tell China what to do? You know, how the hell do they think... Does anyone in their right mind think that we've got a say over what Russia does? Its population's nearly twice what ours is. I know they're not a rich country in terms of GDP per capita, but still, they've got nuclear weapons. Big bloody country, the biggest in the world. How are we going to tell the US what to do? How are we going to do that? We can't do that on our own. But a united front of the European Union can. And yet we just left. I mean, the madness. So was Cyprus in the 70s, still UN troops there. Yeah, the film Wild Geese comes to mind when Graham talks about these African countries. Wasn't that Sean Connery was in that? Make myself more approachable by playing cricket. Squire that one right down. That was Idi Amin's trick, wasn't it? Didn't Idi Amin like to dress in cricketing whites? Graham, what's the local food production like in Central African Republic? It's a lot of what's it called? Soygum? Soygum, is it? Yeah, soygum is a bit of a staple dish over there. Obviously, down in the south where you got the jungle areas, there's a lot of tropical fruit and things that you can grow there, which is great. Up in the north, gets very, very arid and very dry up there, up towards Chad, and I can't see there being much in the way of farming up there. But a big cash crop for Central African Republic is coffee. A lot of coffee is grown there. Britain is a right mess, says Plum Duff. Yeah. Look at Zimbabwe. Yeah. I still think it was Lewis Brindley that pushed the statue into the harbour. How else were those people found not guilty? Pineapple Boy says, well said. How much blood is a line in the sand worth? How much? That could be a fruitful discussion about all corners of the world. Yeah. Devolution. Demarcation. City-states. I'll be quite happy for Liverpool in particular to break away as a city-state within the EU. So for the big things like defence, we can rely on the EU to, pitch in for our defence. We already do that through NATO, by the way. And 20 of the 30 countries of NATO, is it 20? It's 20, isn't it? 20 of the 30 countries of NATO are in the European Union. Wow. And another 3 of them want to be. But yeah, I mean, that's possibly a better way of running things. I would rather be run by people who, know my area and know the lay of the land where I live, rather than someone who's just visited it once on a flying visit, as most people in Westminster have in the case of Liverpool or other northern cities, to be honest with you. But yeah, that's a discussion for another day. Story of Central African Republic, as a reminder of my dad told me, is you don't know how lucky you are. Yeah. Patrick McCarthy saying, you're right, Graham, we're told nothing. We're not. I mean, there was something that I don't know if I read this a while ago. It really stuck with me. It was an article about how celebrity news gets into the news in a way that you wouldn't pick up a copy of OK Magazine or Hello and expect to read about the latest civil war in Africa. Why is this celebrity shite getting into our real news? I don't care. I really, really don't care. Do you know what? It was so long ago. It was about, get this, it was about the person writing it was complaining about the fact that she knew the name of Amy Winehouse's boyfriend. And she's like, I don't need to know this information. That's how long ago it was, when Amy Winehouse was still alive. I don't need to know this. Why do I know it? Well, because it appears in news sources. And we're wasting all this space. I mean, look, we've got a short attention span. We all have. We've got other things to do with our lives. We can't, there's only so much information we can process. I'm wasting our time on this planet learning about the sex lives of celebrities. I'm sorry. I know some people really enjoy it, and that's fine. But for people like myself who don't give a flying fuck about who Khloe Kardashian is going out with this week, I don't care, right? I really don't care. And I don't want any of the bandwidth in my brain being taken up by that absolutely useless knowledge when I could be learning something interesting and informative about the world, about the planet that we live on and the people that live on it, and the history and how we got to where we are, our story. Our humanity story, nature's story, the planet's story. I find that interesting. And I hate it when stuff that I don't care about is just shoved in my face. It's like being forced to listen to a song I don't like. Why are you making me listen to this song? I hate it. Puts me in a bad mood for the rest of the day. Al Jazeera is one of my favourite news channels. They had an interview with Catherine Samba-Panza in 2014. Oh yeah, Al Jazeera does do quite a few more sort of stories around the world. I mean, the BBC used to do more. They honestly used to do so much more, and now it's just like they fob it off to some of the BBC News 24, BBC News. I know it's not called BBC News 24, but the news channel, to have these, inside story or whatever they call it. There's not as much of a focus as there used to be. When I was growing up, you had like World in Action on ITV. You don't have that anymore. That was a primetime show. It was on at 8 o'clock on ITV, and it would show you a part of the world and say, "Hey, this is what's going on." And most panoramas now, I mean, panorama when I was growing up, that was a lot to do with what was going on around the world. Now it's just obsessing over, obviously, what's happening in the UK and the US because it's so crazy. Anyway, it's feeding to ignorance and mental slavery, says number 3. Yeah. I'm rewatching Drop the Dead Donkey, says Chubai. It's quite pertinent. Fuel goes up here and we just accept it. Yeah, Plum Duff, you're absolutely right. Okay, Don't Look Up, says Pineapple Boy. Yeah, if you haven't watched it yet, please watch it. Right, I am going to head over to the Discord server. I'm going to give you the link and it will stay open. This link will stay open for 6 hours. So if you're watching this in the next 6 hours, please feel free to join us over there. And we're going to have a quick quiz. We're going to have a quiz on the Discord server. So join us for the quiz if you want to come for the quiz. It'll be fun, believe me. Just got to make sure. Oh God, I'm part of so many channels now. This is not healthy. My channel's still called Rejoin EU. I am going to change the name of it to just, I don't know, Graham Hughes or something. But then it might get even more confusing. I don't know. Right, let's invite some people. Invite will expire in 6 hours. Generate a link. Put it in here. Oh, Glasgow Kiss has just done it for me. And I've just put in a message because I pressed copy and then it didn't copy across. Faustin Archange. That's the name of that's the first two. That's the Christian names of the current president of the Central African Republic. I've just put his name up there in the chat because I thought it had copied onto my clipboard and it hadn't. Anyway, so Glasgow Kiss has been wonderful there. He's put in a Discord link and I've just put one in as well. Are there any streams by the Yogcast at the end of the event, at the time of the event? I don't know. Number 3 says attention-grabbing emotional stuff, short-term family-focused thinking versus climate choices, etc. Indeed. Unfortunately, my investigations into Bristol Pusher have all hit dead ends. Okay. All right. Well, if Liverpool goes, can Chester be included? Hi, Charlie. No, I'm afraid. I'm sorry. Thank you for the £2 super chat, but no, Chester can't be included. You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. I'm only joking. Chester's not that bad, but Cheshire it's very Tory. It's very, very Tory, and we just don't want that. We don't want the Tories. Don't want the woolly-backs. And my mum's just come on to say goodnight. Oh, good night, Mum. So thank you for joining me for this Hughes of the World. I've overrun a little bit, actually. That's okay. I didn't come on until about 10 past. So I would just like to say thank you to all of my patrons, all of my YouTube subscribers. I'm really sorry that this was supposed to go out on a new channel today, and I promoted it as going out on a new channel. And then just before I came online, I found out that actually you have to let YouTube know 24 hours in advance that you want to do a live show on a new channel. Damn. So could do it tomorrow night, but I thought, no. So I'm going to do it tonight, and I'll do it tonight. So if you want to join us on the Discord server, you will be very welcome, whether you're a patron or not. But please consider becoming a patron. It only costs £3 a month, and that will give you access to Film Club, which is going to take place on Sundays from now on, starting at 8 o'clock on my new Graham Hughes Films channel, and then moving across to the Discord server to actually watch a movie together. If that sounds like your cup of tea, please let's have a chat about it on the Discord server after this. But thanks for watching. Thank you for supporting. Hit the like on the way out, or the dislike. It doesn't make any difference, really, I don't think, to the algorithms. But yeah, like I say, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Hughes of the World, when we will be travelling far, far away from Central African Republic to its neighbour, Chad, which actually I was considering putting in the under T in this list, because when you go to Chad, you find out that they actually spell their country T-C-H-A-D, Chad, with a T at the beginning. But in English, it's Chad, and on all the maps, it's Chad. So we're doing Chad next. So next up on Hughes the World, Chad. Next week, Thursday, 10 o'clock. Hope to see you there. And until then, fair winds and following seas, traveller.